And number one is you need what I call the trigger. And I wrote about this in my book. But the trigger is some change from the status quo that makes you want to do it. That one's usually easy or self-evident. You're frustrated, you're in transition, you're looking for something to control your own destiny. So that one's easy. But the second one is...
Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
You've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Our guest today is David Busker, and if you're looking to open a franchise, you need to talk to David before you do. How are you doing, David?
Great. How you doing, Ken?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for joining us today. I know you're busy, so we're just going to jump right into it. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, just a little bit of backstory so we know who we're talking to?
Yeah, so I'm a franchise consultant. So I have my own independent consulting company called Franchise Vision. I'm part of a national network of franchise consultants, and I help people who want to get started in business to figure out their criteria. I match them to brands that will perfectly match the business model they're looking for, and then guide them through that due diligence and signing process. My background before this, I am a franchise owner myself. It's how I got into become a consultant. I'm still own the franchise that I bought years ago, and still run that with an operating partner. And I started out like many of my candidates in corporate America. I was in a Fortune 500 company and was in the wrong seat one day when a new CFO came in and displaced our team. I went to a smaller company where I was CFO and then CEO for 13 years in that industry in commercial real estate. Had a great experience, but unfortunately, at the end of the day, sometimes even being CEO doesn't change, doesn't help you control your destiny when the board, blew up the company and outsourced everything. So that was kind of the triggers for me to get into entrepreneurship and start businesses that I could control myself.
Absolutely. People think that CEOs have all the control, but they're really they're implementing the vision of a board most of the time. If they have an active board, that's what a CEO is going to be doing is executing the vision from the board if it's set up properly. So that's interesting. So you were at corporate America, big company, then kind of downsized, and now you're at a smaller firm, and still small corporate real estate. That's a small corporate real estate company is 50 million a year.
No, we had about, you mean 50 million in revenue kind of size? Yeah, more along those lines.
Right.
And
okay.
We had a portfolio of commercial real estate in about 7 states. We were in retail, office, industrial, and some entertainment real estate, so we're pretty diversified. And it was a great experience, and I'm still involved as a part owner. I'm still an investor in some of those projects, but ultimately the management company was imploded and outsourced, and so I left as part of that.
Yeah, unless you are in the industry, the commercial real estate industry ebbs and flows pretty dramatically, and we're post-COVID, we're in a pretty crazy commercial real estate time. So that's pretty interesting.
Definitely.
Now, so you went through another transition at the smaller firm. Were you let go again, or did you make the decision to leave?
So, I was CEO of the real estate company, and a new board was put in place who immediately reversed it was a family-owned business, and the family had built it the way, I built it the way they wanted me to, right? And they loved it. But then, the new board came in and said, well, there isn't another generation to take this over. So let's just, let's reduce everything and outsource everything. And so it really changed the dynamics of that. So I left there. I actually joined a startup company for about 15, 18 months. And as startup companies are known to do, it didn't make it. And so that's when that was the third time I'd lost my W-2 position, so to speak, for some organizational circumstance beyond my control. So that was the final trigger for me to really just move entirely into self-employment space.
Right. And that first one was not franchise vision, right? You bought a franchise and you still own
Correct.
today with a partner.
I own yes, correct. So when I was working, I had a day job. I was with a startup company, so I was one of the founding executives of that company. I didn't own the company, but again,
Right.
I was one of the executives there building out our market. And I realized a few months into that as good as the concept was, I was sold on it. It probably was going to have a tough time getting traction the way that they were approaching the market. And so I started looking for alternatives, things that I could do while I kept my day job. And that's when I had talked to one of my friends who had very big success in franchising, and it got me thinking about it. And so I talked to a consultant and ended up in a boutique fitness franchise, not an industry I was seeking out, but it really checked a lot of the check boxes for me at that time. I was able to keep my corporate position, start that business. I had an operating partner that was running it for me, and I still own that today. That's 5 years later.
Fantastic. I love the boutique fitness, the boutique industry, brick and mortar industry altogether, right? The massage parlors, the fitness, the yoga, all of those things I absolutely love. I think those create a lot of Main Street jobs and stuff like that. So I think they're important. And post-COVID, as we're getting back into, social endeavors and things like that, I think they're more important now than they've ever been. So I think that particular industry has its book is yet to be written, right? I think we're in chapter 1.
That's right. Well, it was certainly launching fast, and a lot of things are changing about personal services driven by generational changes. We have this kind of big lumpy thing with baby boomers, and then Gen X half the size, and then millennials again double the size. And it's really interesting to see the changes in how people live, work, and play with those generational changes unfold. And I do think, although COVID was certainly a hit on some of those industries that are personal services, retail, facing, it is creating opportunities that I see people, now taking advantage of with, lower cost basis, better rental options, and other things that they can do. Still cheap financing, so we still have that out there. A lot of capital available, so it is in the stock market being good, which helps finance things much more easily. So it's a good combination if you want to do a brick and mortar brand, but also service brands that don't require brick and mortar. A lot of businesses starting up that way as well.
Yeah, I think the brick and mortar trick today is going to have to be, in the future at least, is going to have to be some kind of experience based, right? And the boutique fitness falls right in there. If it's not an experience, you're going to have a hard time getting the kids out of Internet 3.0 and over their mask problems that they have, all these social issues that we have today. So I think it's a great industry, and I think it's going to be around for a very long time. So now you've got the franchise, so somebody hands you an operating manual, you're executing on those kinds of things. You've learned a whole lot through this process, and you say, hey, I can consult other people on this process. And you're the founder of Franchise Vision. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So I work across the US and Canada. So I'm a big networker, and mostly I work by referral and from former candidates, people who I've helped put them into business. Then they refer me, people who have talked to them say, hey, how did you do this? And so it's a lot of referral business. But I also have to kind of network nationally because I work across the US and Canada. So I have a digital platform. I have written a book on the process, which has helped me expand my reach and help people across North America.
Fantastic. So you let go from a job, you start a franchise. That's a pretty big transition, right? And then later on, you start your own company to help other people. But what I really want to focus on now is that transition stage, right? The fears, the anger, maybe some of the resentment from the past position, right? And then, how was your family through that? Were they supportive? Were they kind of like, hey, just go get another job? This isn't going to work for us. What were some of those those transition moments and your transition story from W-2 to now you got to get customer number one. Did you buy a franchise that was existing, or did you open one from on?
I opened from scratch.
You opened from
we
scratch.
We were actually the first location in the state of Missouri. So to open. So we were buying a new brand, an emerging brand, and of course, so it had no brand identities to speak of when we opened. Now, of course, now they have 300 locations. They're much more common across the U.S. and we have more brand recognition. But at the time, it was certainly an unknown thing that I was beginning. But that you mentioned the transition for me is that I knew I was interviewing for jobs, right? I was looking at it. I was a small business CEO, and so there was kind of an unusual path to try to get a similar job. My background being finance, and so obviously being a CFO in my industry was an obvious path. But we're a relatively stable market, not super fast growing, and there were just only limited opportunities. And so I chose to join a startup. I started a franchise business, ultimately went into self-employment. My wife, who's a corporate executive, was very supportive, kind of helping me make that transition, although she was kind of questioning me, right? Like, well, why don't you just go, get a job and, be that corporate controller or whatever that, you're a CPA, you can go do that stuff. And it was interesting because I said, well, other than, taking my career back 20 years and crushing my soul, it also put me at great risk because as I approach 50 years old, if you're not in the C-suite by 50, right, you're out by 60. So where are you gonna land? Do you have an exit strategy? And it's a little scary to make that kind of transition. It's a little zigzagged for me, but now that we've been through it and I've gotten businesses going, I have a stable consulting business and moved entirely to self-employment, COVID hit. And then my wife, who was the corporate employee, considered herself stable, suddenly, was laid off. And so she was able to get a new corporate job, but me being self-employed, I was able to control, my own activity through COVID and not be subject to any of those kind of risks. And so she definitely favors the move that I made into self-employment as I become the stable one, and now she's in corporate America, which is always a risk.
Absolutely. Corporate America is not a place that I necessarily like to live. Once you get to, I was pretty happy when we were at 150 employees, and we're way smaller than that right now. But that it starts to get really, really stressful over 50 employees, right? There's all this human resources stuff that just doesn't fit in my wheelhouse very well without having a great HR team to just handle all of those things. So, and then if you're in Missouri, you had a 3-month shutdown for your fitness company, right? And that was challenging. Yes. And your wife lost her job all at the same time. That's got to be a lot of adversity to overcome. How do you have any tricks like in those times where it feels like everything's falling apart? Like the country's shut down, my business is shut down, my wife's lost her job, right? How do you wake up in the morning with a smile on your face and say, hey, everything's going to be okay. We're going to figure this out also.
Well, I think for me is it's just about taking action. I learned, early on as a business owner that, you're going to face obstacles, but, I didn't know what those were. And I'm analytical by nature, right? Being a CPA and a financial guy. So as obstacles would come up, you tend to get paralysis by analysis. And, my wife actually was good counsel for me because, her method's a little bit different than mine. Her method is take action. And even though she works in the corporate world, she's very action oriented. And of course that makes her a rock star there. And for me, I learned as a business owner is that if you just take action, whatever you built it up to be in your head, it's not as big as an obstacle as as it is if you just start working the problem. And the other thing I've learned too is that what you see sometimes as problems or obstacles become opportunities. And example I would use is, right at a critical time, COVID hit. We the day that we were coming out relaunching, my general manager quit at my fitness studio. And rather than seeing that as an obstacle, obviously it was a pain in the rear. But on the flip side, I looked as an opportunity to improve our team and find a better general manager. And I think that's a mentality, mindset shift you have to make if you're going to be a business owner. You just can't let things get to you, and you have to say, okay, here's an obstacle. You have to look at it as an obstacle, not, it's not an impasse. And you just redirect your path, right? You put it into 4-wheel drive, go over it, go around it, and
right. Or
look at it as an opportunity. Like, you know what? I think this path over here might actually be smoother. So let's maybe shift a little bit.
Yeah, I always find it intriguing when people are really, really upset when an employee leaves. And if they're leaving for some kind of reason. I think it's a time to look back at your company and saying, hey, were they sad when they left, or were they like, middle fingers, they were walking out the door, right? Kind of, do I need to make some changes? And if they were leaving for a reason. Hopefully it's because they outgrew that position and they got a better opportunity, and you can get somebody new and hungry in that position. Sometimes, most of the time, I think that works out for the better when an employee decides to leave or you decide to replace that employee, which is always
almost
for me,
every time. But it's a common fear, and I had the same fear for new business owners, right? You're like, how am I gonna find people, good people? I mean, that's a big concern. And I'm like, well, there are people out there. If you're a good leader, you can identify and motivate and retain people, then you're going to be successful, because
absolutely
you're automatically better than average.
Now, I have a personal problem that I deal with all the time in my businesses, and maybe you can give me some insight here. I've overcome that fear of losing staff, right? It's okay, it happens, but sometimes it comes off in a way that I don't care about my current staff, right? Which is absolutely not true. I love my current staff. They require me to, they're required to make everything happen that needs to happen for me, for them, for our clients, for everybody. But having the attitude of, oh, if you leave, that's okay, we'll find your replacement. It would be sad. We don't want that to happen. It's a fine line to toe. How do you make sure that you're not, devaluing your current staff at the same time, making sure that you're not just scared as heck of losing somebody?
To me, it's communication. It's being transparent. Leadership to me is, if you're a leader by definition, right, that means people follow you. And why would they follow you? Right?
Well, I don't know. I can't figure it out, but they do. So I'm happy about it.
Well, think about the military. Why would a platoon leader the soldiers follow that person into battle, right, where they're going to get shot at? It's because they trust that person. And why do you trust that person? And to me, it's clear. You do what you say you're going to do, and you communicate clearly, and you explain the why. A lot of people don't explain the why. They're like, here, do this. They delegate, here's the job. But if the person doing the job that you're delegating to, if they're a good person and they want to work there, they kind of want to know how their contribution fits in the bigger picture. They want to have that piece of the puzzle. And so if you can communicate that and say, here's what you're doing, why it's valuable to the company, and here's what it's going to mean to the greater goals that we're creating, it goes so far, especially in like a franchise business where you may have a lot of part-time people or unskilled workers. Just having that, feeling part that they're contributing to something greater, the greater goal, is so valuable, and it breeds a lot of trust.
Right. I think that's why I like small teams so much. Right. Even in companies where I've got 20 and 30 employees, I break them down into teams of 4 and 5 and work them really close together. I think it just helps with that communication, and they get to see their output and their results so much easier than, if you got a group of 150 programmers on some kind of application, nobody cares because they can't see their outcome. They don't even know you know, what
it's
their
not
project
a team,
is.
right? I mean, if you have teammates, right, then you
Right.
you trust each other because you're all part of you're part of getting the ball across the goal or whatever. So, and if you each have a role to play, and so I think team building, creating an environment where those people can build relationships and you can have that kind of culture is important. I say it's not as important to me. I can't be everybody's best friend. I'm maybe not,
Right.
but I want them to feel good about like being on my team and being part of our team
Right.
and treating everybody with respect and at whatever level they are on the team. We try to take that to heart.
Absolutely. I remember, this has been over 20 years ago. I was managing a pizza joint, right? And the owner told me, he goes, "Oh, just manage them by being their common enemy." Right. And that worked in a pizza joint almost 30 years ago. But it doesn't work today, right? I don't think it works at all. And it might still in a pizza joint, but
No.
it doesn't work in my world for sure. So
It does not.
if you still got that mentality of be the common enemy of your staff, you've got a problem. I do recommend having a bulldog in your company that's going to be that person that's going to have those strict conversations if you need them. Unfortunately, most of the time it's me for myself, but I don't like doing that much anymore.
Right? It's not a trick.
Hard.
That's not the right word. It's a skill to be able to have people respect and embrace what you're doing, but yet hold them accountable. Right. So how do you hold people accountable without alienating people, without being an a-hole? Those kinds of things. It's like,
Hard.
it's kind of a skill, and it's a learned thing,
Right.
I'm not saying by any means I'm good at it, but I strive to be better at it every time. I've gotten better over the years, that's for sure, because I've worked hard on it.
I've had a couple of decent conversations recently that I'm like, wow, that 5 years ago, that would have been this huge, big blowout fight, but this time we handled it way better. So constantly learning, constantly improving. And I think, as a boss or a leader, I think your staff understands that you're going through that too. Right, that you're changing and that you're evolving as their boss. At least I hope they do. My staff has communicated to me that they can see those changes when I make really big efforts for improving how we communicate in the company.
Absolutely.
So, David, you give recommendations to people that want to become franchise owners, right? They want to open their franchise, and there's a big difference between somebody that says, "Hey, I want to open a Dunkin' Donuts," or "I want to open Ken's Donut Shop." Is there a specific mentality between the two of them where I'm just going to buy a franchise, the brand name, the operating model, and all of those things, versus, nope, I'm going to pour the batter myself. I'm going to make, Frisbee donuts or whatever. I'm not going to follow that line of living under. Is there a mindset or a specific kind of person that fits in the franchise model versus the creating my own concept model?
Well, I will tell you, I feel like, the longer I do this, the more that I see corporate executives who have worked in an organization, they've led, hired, managed people, they understand the parameters and the limits, they become very good franchisees. I think if you think of the Steve Jobs entrepreneur, like there are people, and I've talked to some that like, they're just never going to have a W-2, right? And while that's fine, they may start the donut shop. But most of my candidates are looking to leverage their time. So that's what a franchise can give you, is it can help you leverage your time better, because you're not worried about, I got to create the brand, I have to do the back office, which POS software should I use? All of these things that don't really bring you customers, they don't create revenue, but they consume a lot of time. And so where a franchise can come in is that they have these economies of scale, and especially in fragmented businesses that are everyday essential services, where your competition is kind of mom and pop local companies, that's where a franchise really shines, because they have top of the line customer service, customer experience that they deliver, which oftentimes through technology and other means, whether it's a GPS, a text that, hey, Bob's going to be there at 2:45, and guess what? Bob actually shows up at 2:45. Franchises can deliver that kind of at scale, whereas if you were a single mom and pop shop or you're open your own donut shop, you just don't have access to those level of tools and sophistication, the processes, the procedures. So it leverages your time better than, starting a business from scratch. And most people have the goals of it's more about controlling their destiny, not working for someone else, having a better lifestyle. That's what's important, than that I have to own the widget, or I got to be the creator of the, whatever it is.
Right.
So that's I think that's what I see, that it's common, people that go into franchising.
Wonderful. So I know if you're going to start a new concept, right? Concept doesn't exist. I'm going to create something new, that I have to be wildly passionate about that specific topic. And not even passionate. I think I have to be obsessed with whatever that is. If I'm opening a franchise, how important is it that I'm passionate about, like you opened a boutique fitness, right? Are you super passionate about that? Or could I open a Subway? I'm not super passionate about sandwiches, right? So and I guess there are people that are, right? But I'm not. So is it more important, or still as important, to be passionate about the kind of franchise that you're opening if you're going to open a franchise? Or is it really just the love of the business and the analytics that pulls that through?
Well, what I say is, don't make your hobby your business. It's, if you go through all of the objective things and what you need in a business model, and that's what I help my candidates do, is figure out that criteria. If you go through all those objective things that you have to have, and the model is correct, and then it happens to coincide with an industry you're passionate about, then great. But what you have to be passionate about is controlling your destiny, owning a business, leading people, building an empire, whatever is passionate about you, but it should be industry agnostic, in my opinion. Now, you have to believe in your product or service. I mean, boutique fitness, I'll use myself as an example. I love my business. I go there, I take classes, I high five people, I get great feedback from our customers. I've had people walk up to me and say, "You changed my life. Thank you so much for bringing this here," right? And that's very important to me. And I love that feedback. I love the lifestyle, our team, but I'm also a casual user. So I'm not there every day. I'm not obsessed with it. And we have some customers that are. The customers are there 7 days a week. We had a customer who rode every single day. She had 1,000 classes in 3 years, and literally, once or twice a day. And she's now one of our instructors because she loves the brand so much. So I'm not to that level of obsession, but I do believe in our service. I love the brand. I love the platform. I love everything we do. But I'm more passionate about building the business, being the owner, leading the team. Those are the things I think that you need to be passionate about, not the widget.
Yeah, and I'm definitely more passionate about the creation than I am about the grind. I'm a pretty good operator. I do like the grind, but I like that creation moment better. For sure.
I'm a builder too. I prefer to be a builder versus the operator in a way.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you made an interesting statement. I just want to dig into that a little bit, because I would probably waver on this statement multiple times throughout my life. Don't make your hobby your business. Why? Why wouldn't I do that?
The risk is that you end up hating your hobby. So think of the guy that loves to play golf, right? And he loves to play golf, and he's like, well, I'm going to go own a golf shop. Well, then he gets into the business and realizes that, it's a retail inventory intensive business that requires him to be busiest on the weekends when he might otherwise be playing golf. So if he were looking at it like, what do I love to play golf? Maybe he'd be better in a B2B type franchise or a B2B business where it's more 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. And his role would be to entertain clients and take them to the golf course and play golf on the weekends. That might be where he could marry his passion with his business in a more pleasant way versus going into something he think is a golf related, but end up hating his business. He might end up hating golf.
Right.
So it's a caution. It's not like I said, like, there are a lot of people in boutique fitness. If it otherwise fits all your criteria and you're passionate about fitness, absolutely wonderful. And I've placed a lot of people in that category. But if I had someone who needed to, they needed a quick ramp, they had a smaller pool of capital, was looking for something, more of a daily job, a career that could, quickly ramp and have low overhead, then boutique fitness probably wouldn't be a good fit, even though they may be passionate about it. If they got into it, they might, it's a different type of model than maybe what they would match to.
Right. When I was young, my hobby was film and video, and I went into that industry. I went to film school and all that fun stuff. And then I found myself in Nebraska for 4 months filming how to pour concrete. And I hated my job really, really quickly, making a documentary on pouring concrete, literally watching concrete dry. And so I'm with you. I understand the risk of making your hobby your career. And I did. It ended up, I hated film for a very long time. I'm back in that world again in a more easy structure for myself that I control, where I'm not taking jobs that I don't want to take.
It's more of a caution than
yes.
than anything else. It's not a forbidden thing. It's
right.
Just be careful. Make sure that the business model matches you before you and the passion. Don't just
yes.
go on passion alone.
Yeah, I think if your passion when you're young is really, really bright, so it can get burnt faster when you're doing something you don't want to do based on that love. So fantastic. David, I've had a blast talking with you. If somebody wanted to work with you, how would they get in contact with you?
Well, you can go to my contact page at franchisevision.com and just go to contact, and there's a calendar. My calendar's right there. You can choose a time to set up a consultation discussion. There's no cost for using my services. So if you're just curious, you want to explore franchising, understand what the models are, where you might fit, any of that, free discussion at any time. And I wrote a book called Franchise Vision. I published a couple of years ago. So if you would like a free copy of that would give you a lot of information. It's not open to the public. You can buy it on Amazon, but for your listeners, you can go to franchisevision.com/free and enter your information, and you can get a free electronic copy of the book.
Thank you so much for that. And so your services are absolutely free to the franchisee. So you get a commission if they buy one of the franchises, and that's how you end up getting paid. So your service
Correct.
is no cost to the franchisee through the entire process?
No cost to the candidate. And there's no extra cost if you end up buying a franchise, whether you use a consultant right. or not. Think about a real estate transaction. A house doesn't cost more if you use an agent or an right. executive recruiter. Like if you get your job through an executive recruiter that finds you, it's not like they're going to pay you less money if they use an executive recruiter. But a lot of companies are looking for a certain profile. A franchisee has to be qualified. They need a certain profile, set of skills, experience. They need right. financial wherewithal. So the companies work with consultants like us to help them, help candidates figure out what color their parachute is, get through that process, match to the right franchise, know it's available, know it matches their budget. So it just avoids wasting time.
Absolutely. Do you have anything you'd like to leave the audience before we go?
Hey, I call it franchise vision because there's two emotions that you have to get over to become a business owner and actually take the leap. And number one is you need what I call the trigger. And I wrote about this in my book, but the trigger is some change from the status quo that makes you want to do it. That one's usually easy or self-evident. You're frustrated, you're in transition, you're looking for something to control your own destiny. So that one's easy. But the second one is a positive future vision. You need to know what your future looks like. You need to do an exercise where you look 5 or 10 years out. And that's why I named my business Franchise Vision, is because if you don't have that vision of what you want it to be, it's much less likely you're ever going to get there. You know, there's the old saying, is like, well, if you don't know where you want to go, then any path will take you there. So, you know, create that vision of what you want, and then decide, like, okay, how am I going to get there? And then you start looking at your options more objectively. Like, is franchising a path? Maybe it's not right for you, but maybe you're more likely to find your right path if you create that vision of, and that plan of what you want it to look like in 5, 10, or whatever your timeline is, that destination that you're looking for.
Absolutely. If you don't know where you want to be, you won't recognize the opportunities when they show up, right? And the opportunities are there. Probably my biggest hurdle is the opportunities that sit in front of me every morning, right? Which one am I going to try to execute on that day? So,
right.
Thank you.
So I can tell you have an abundance mentality. So if you think everything's a zero-sum game, that you can't succeed unless someone else fails, then you're probably not an entrepreneur.
There's plenty in this universe for all of us to go get, right? It's especially in America. I mean, there's places that it's harder, more challenging to get there, but you know, the world is an abundant place, and especially in this country. And if you're not taking advantage of that, then I feel sorry for you. But if you're happy with where you're at in your job and that's what you want, then I love that as well. So it's about what,
be an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah. So if you like that, then that's your game, then stick there. So thank you for your time today, David. I hope that we talk again soon.
Hey, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
That's it for today's show, folks. If you'd like to join my text line community, the number is 314-370-2871. When you join that line, you send me any text message asking me a question about business or technology, and I will send you an absolutely unbiased answer. That's it for today. Get to work.